I think that an absolute golden rule in this way of growing and healing and taking our path forwards is that if things feel hard, it means we need more support.
Hello there, I'm Dr. Rosy Daniel.
And hello, I'm Karen Mellers, and together we are alive and we're loving it.
Wonderful. So we're here to help you find more life in your life. How great is that? We want to help you have the courage and the support to pursue what it is you love the most in your life and to become true to yourself. So this means coming fully alive as you nurture yourself in body, mind and spirit.
Through our guests, we've got such inspiring personal stories with so many profound insights. There's in-depth knowledge, there's scientific evidence, because we want to reveal how excitement, happiness and living with purpose, they're not just good for your soul, they're essential for your health and your well-being. You know, when you're really, truly alive, you are at your healthiest.
And that is the truth. So we also invite you to join our loving community, because when you connect with a community of like-minded people where you feel you belong, this is the best way of all to protect your precious health.
So grab a cuppa, tune in and start living life to the full. We're ready. Hello again. Good to be with you for our second episode of Alive and Loving It. Today we are dropping into even deeper water with the health creation principle being true to yourself. And our expert for our very first expert recording is our very own Dr. Rosy Daniel. Hello, Rosy. How are you?
Hello, Karen. I'm absolutely marvellous and very, very happy to be here.
Well, who could we have else as an expert for living authentically and living true to herself? Because you are my hero in that.
Oh, bless your heart. That's so kind.
You are a holistic doctor. You're very passionate now about sharing what you've learned over the last 40 years about the mind-body connection and what led you to becoming a holistic doctor, because you couldn't be anything else, really. How did it all begin, Rosy?
Okay, well, I think it was in my teens, really. I was trying to be almost anything other than a doctor, because my mum, dad, brother, grandfather, aunt, and 2 uncles were all GPs. So I wanted to be anything else, a cook or an actress or a singer. But it got me in the end because my best friend developed a terrible irritable bowel syndrome. And I noticed the way that it was ebbing and flowing with her state of mind. So when she got excited and happy and fell in love, it seemed to calm down. When she got upset, conflicted, frightened, angry, it flared up. And I was witnessing, we are talking in the 70s, by the way. Yeah. I was witnessing the mind-body connection, but I couldn't find anything describing it. So I was very curious and I was looking to see, was there any system of health that seemed to be talking about this? And the only thing I could find was acupuncture, which was talking about the effect of the mentals. And so I called up a very famous acupuncturist who was the acupuncturist to Osho, a guy called Dr. Shyam Balasingham, and said, would you train me? Could I be your apprentice? And he said, only if you get 3 science O and A levels. Well, at that time, I was quite a wild child, but staggeringly, I listened to him. It was the voice of authority, and I did it. I went to college and I did it. And during that time, I had the insight or the download that I needed to be a doctor to be a bridge between these worlds of orthodox and complementary medicine. That it set me off altogether on a 13-year training journey just to get to be a doctor and then a GP. And that's before the training in holistic medicine. But wow, has it ever been a rewarding and fulfilling path?
On behalf of all your patients, can I say thank you? Because the advice I get from you has just been life-changing, Rosy. So much hard work. But so what is a holistic doctor, and how did you train to be one of those?
Okay, so in holism, the idea is that we are a being with multiple levels of body, mind, spirit, all sitting in the environment, not separate from, but just part of our environment, the social networks, the connections that we have. And in this model, the idea is that all the levels affect all the other levels. And so when it comes to looking at disease or dis-ease, it could be arising from any level. So it gives us this much broader lens through which to see how somebody is and to work out what is ailing them. And the other fascinating part of the holistic approach is that the truth shines out of every pore, so there are iridologists who can tell how you are from your iris. There are graphologists who can tell how you are from your handwriting. There are reflexologists who can sense how you are from your feet and the reflexes in your feet, and so on. An acupuncturist will take your pulse from the wrist. A shiatsu practitioner will take your pulse from the hara or the belly. So there are all these different ways to look at the whole. And so it can be both diagnostic, but also you can give treatments through those different modalities, which is just totally brilliant because, we can all receive healing in different ways. There are some people who will never find healing on the end of an acupuncture needle.
Yeah.
There are some people for whom the idea of a homeopathy pill is completely nuts, and there are other people who might never feel comfortable to have spiritual healing. So one of my major skill sets is both to be able to listen and hear what it is that's ailing people and where the wound is, where is that dis-ease, but also to try and sense how can that person be helped? How can we get the right sort of therapy to them?
And I guess if there's a resistance there already to a particular treatment, then there's no point in pushing that. You have to find what the person is open to. But like you
Yes.
say, you can come in many different ways if you've got a view of the whole picture. So how's the training for that? How did you
Well,
you find that? Is that something that's readily available?
it certainly isn't. And many of us made huge attempts really from that point of the 70s, 80s, 90s, noughties to try to formalize education. I was part of the British Holistic Medical Association, bringing doctors together to try to define what we were doing, to try to set up practice standards and education. I then was one of the members of the Prince of Wales's Foundation for Integrative Medicine. So I did work with him on looking at what was the research needed, the standards, the education, the collaboration. In fact, I'm proud to say that I proposed the formation of an extra group in that whole nexus for looking at what was working in holistic healthcare. And that group still exists to today, giving out awards. It's now become the College of Medicine run by Dr. Michael Dixon, OBE. So that group goes on till today. But there has also been a lot of negative attention from groups of doctors and pharmacologists who have thought that what we're trying to do does not make sense, is not scientific, and is really misleading for the public. So, there has been quite a tension.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as somebody that has received many different treatments, many different therapies with many different teachers, I know now that to help myself be at my optimum wellness, it isn't just a pill to take that makes me all better.
Yeah.
And one of the principles that I know you work with and we work with in health creation is that you know yourself better than anybody else.
Yes.
And the responsibility for your health lies with you.
Yes. And of course, how strong we are and how able we are to help ourselves depends on what's going on for us, but it depends on our energy levels. So, of course, the hope is that we move it through that therapeutic level into the self-help level, and then into that we're taking people from passive healthcare to proactive health creation, as I call it. But the thing with that is that if our energy levels are low, or we'll come to this when we talk about the vitality principle, there's a point below which it's really, really difficult to self-help.
Yeah.
Because our life energy is just too low, or we're too broken, we're too upset. And so at that point, we need passive input of loving support and maybe healing or therapy to lift us to the point where self-help becomes possible. Because otherwise, it's just plain cruelty. If you're saying to people, well, all you need to do is change your diet and exercise and start a meditation practice, and they can't do it.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that described as being, so we're in self-regulation all the time. You know, we're trying to bring ourselves back into that state of balance. But if our self-regulation goes out of kilter, or it just stops because there's been a traumatic event, either one single event or over a long period of time, and our life energy is so low, then we need co-regulation. We need to be with others to help that
Exactly.
energy lift. Yeah.
That's such a nice way of putting it, Karen, because my sort of golden rule is that if things feel too hard, we need more support.
Yeah.
Most of us grown up thinking, oh, if you can't do it, you're weak, or you've got to try harder, or, but actually, if people soften into, it's really feeling hard for me to go for a walk, let me get a friend to go with me.
Mm-hmm.
Or, I don't think I can get myself off to the swimming pool, get a buddy to come with me, whatever it might be that would actually start to make these things easier. Meditating is another thing that is brings so much deep peace to the nervous system, to the mind, to the heart, and so much uplift. But a lot of people find that a great deal easier in a group.
Yeah.
So in holistic healthcare, as you're hearing, we embrace all these self-help modalities and therapeutic modalities, and that includes medicine. So the reason I had to be trained as a doctor is because sometimes medicine can be incredibly useful and the right thing and life-saving.
Yeah.
So that's what I try to do, to span the whole breadth.
Yeah, wonderful. And how does it affect people's healing then? I mean, you've got so many stories of clients that have come to you and you've treated them in this holistic way with some amazing results, Rosie. I know that we're getting more guests coming onto the show who are going to share their true life stories because it's so inspiring. But can you share one with us now of somebody who's had a complete turnaround from being treated holistically?
Absolutely. How long have you got, Karen?
Another 15 minutes.
And, I think I could give you examples of people who've healed through addressing their physical needs, their nutrition, getting rid of toxic addictions, people in the mind quadrant for whom it's been all about coming out of stress and self-stressing, or healing very wounding relationships, or people who are, in this principle we're talking about to start with, who are paying attention to the reviving of their spirit and starting to do what it is in life that turns them on, lifts them up, floats their boat. And I just would like to give you an example. I learned back in the early days, you were asking about how did I get educated as a holistic doctor? Well, it was very piecemeal, by just studying with the great psychologists, the great healers, the great energy medicine practitioners, the teachers of the new spirituality. So really, it's been a lifelong learning process. And the way I learn is by trying things, by jumping in, by going on those courses, retreats, by having different therapies, so that I can match what therapy might suit which person. So somebody who came in the early days to the Bristol Cancer Help Centre was the extraordinary Larry Leshan, who was a psychologist, a transpersonal psychologist in New York way back. And he wrote a book called Cancer as a Turning Point. He said, get people living like they're a kid on Christmas morning. So, doing the things that they love the most. So Larry's story is of a man, he was dying, supposedly, of a pancreatic tumor. And he was a friend of Larry's. He went to the hospital and said, look, I hear they say you're dying, but what was it in your life you always wanted to do? And he said, oh, for goodness sake, Larry, he got drips, he was in a hospital bed. He said, can't you see, I'm approaching the end. And he said, well, come on, just play with me. What might you have done differently in your life, And he said, well, if we're playing, the thing that I really, really, really wanted to be was a sculptor. And he said, so what happened to that? And he said, well, my parents said, you'll never make a living, you'll never be able to support a family. So what did I do? I went and became an architect, a good architect, but a bored architect. And anyway, so Larry then said provocatively, well, if I could find you a sculpting course to go on, where would it be? I said, well, of course, everybody who wants to sculpt would have wanted to go to Florence. So you've guessed it. He went off, he found a course, he bought this guy tickets because they were mates, and he came back to the hospital and said, right, you're going. I've got your place on a sculpture course in Florence. And so the guy, pulled out all his drips and put on his clothes, and off he went. Well, the story goes that he spent nearly 18 months in Florence. He did that course and many more. He got himself a little apartment. He even had a love affair, and his health came back. He revived when he was living his passion. Anyway, after a year and a half or so, the people at home were saying, what about your home life? What about stuff at home? Aren't you going to come back? Well, the guy went back again, back into his old home and his old lifestyle and his own patterns. And within 2 or 3 months, he had died.
Oh.
So very dramatic story. And I can't resist telling you another one of Larry's favourite stories. He had a guy who came to his office saying, can you help me? Got lymphoma. I have tried everything. What can I do? So again, Larry said, what is it that you love doing most? And he said, well, it's really difficult for me to tell you what I love doing most. So Larry said, come on, have a go. And he said, okay, what I really, really like is being a burglar.
A burglar.
No. Larry said, well, I can't exactly, encourage you to do that. Let me just think about this for a minute. And he thought, and he said, I've got an idea. Why don't you become a firefighter? He said, of course, I'm imagining what you like being as a burglar is all the excitement and the planning and the heist and the drama. Well, isn't that what firemen do? Sit around, they wait for the big fire, and then they all go off, and then they do their daring do's and come back and all sit and talk about it. And he said, what a genius idea. So you've guessed the end of the story. This guy went and became a firefighter, and went into a period of long-term remission. Anyway, a couple of years later, he's back in Larry's office and he's ill again. And Larry said, well, what's happened to the firefighting? And the guy went, oh my God, I stopped doing the firefighting and I went upstairs into the office. I've become part of the administration.
Oh.
So in both stories, when they were out of the energy of the thing that really excited them, then the body started to fail again.
Wow.
And this is why, we're saying about Alive and Loving It, that when we are really alive and on song and doing the things that really, really express us, everything works better in the body. The organs work better, the tissues, the cells, the gene expression changes, because now we've had the subject of psychoneuroimmunology, how the mind and the endocrine system and the immune system connect together. But since then, we've had this whole question of the microgenetics. So it's called epigenetics, how our genes change on the basis of the environment that they're in. And that can be the food and the plant phytonutrients, but it can also be excitement and happiness and the state of mind, which can literally change how our genes are expressed.
While we are alive now, our genes
While we are
can
alive.
change. So that really changes if we get told, it's hereditary. You're going to have this dis-ease because it's hereditary. Does that challenge that then? That actually, if you change your environment, change the soil that you're living in, you become true to yourself, then there might actually be a different future for you.
Well, yes. So with people with a genetic predisposition, say, to cancer, it means that for most of us, there are about 6 mutational steps that have to happen for a cell to move from normal to cancerous.
Yeah.
In somebody with a genetic predisposition, there may be 2 steps less. So there's 4 steps instead of 6, but that's still, it's not a given that you will get cancer if you have a disposition.
Got it.
Meanwhile, in the holistic or the integrative medicine movement, we've become clear about all the things you can do to move your genes in the healthy direction.
Wonderful.
And one of my huge heroes is a man called Dr. Dean Ornish, who is an American cardiologist, who was the first guy who proved that with lifestyle medicine, you can reverse coronary artery stenosis. So that's what causes heart attacks. And it was people on his lifestyle program who reversed, the first in history to reverse these the stenosis.
What we're saying then, breaking it down, being really simple, is that our homework is to go off and do the thing that we said we were going to be when we were little. So we're going to have lots of superheroes and lots of ballet dancers and lots of princesses. But that's amazing, or something like that. What's really landing with me is that if we find something that ignites us like that, and as we said in the last episode, pop the champagne bottle, you're fizzing and you're buzzing, that your spirit becomes alive. But that word spirit, I mean, let's just talk about it a little bit. I mean, we're not talking about religion here, are we? What do you mean by spirit when you're saying that, Rosy?
Okay, so how I break it down is that I've got my spirit with a little s, and I'm sitting in the divine matrix, which is spirit with a big S.
Okay.
So I think that our consciousness is part of the greater consciousness that people call source or universal energy or God. People think of God and this divine source of creative energy being all around us. Many people see it in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly, at this time, something like 69% of us say we're spiritual, 3% say we're religious, and as little as that. And it's a lot because of all the laws and rules and restrictions that have come along with religions from times in history when religions were used to control people, as opposed to teaching the message which runs through all of the big religions, the loving the nature of core truth, that we run on love, we thrive on love, we flourish with love, whether it's love for ourselves, for each other, for life, and to be living in either the Tao or what the yogis call the Vedas, the natural laws, which if we would all stick to those, life would be very, very different. Yeah.
Well, I definitely think that there is more people becoming connected and awakening to the fact of the truth that we are part of this beautiful ecosystem. We are nature. And we are connected to it, and we live in a symbiotic relationship, and that we should work with the rest of nature and not against it. And that seems to be a reawakening of our species. And I was just wondering, is that something that happens to us at a certain age, or is it happening younger now for people? How have you experienced that awakening, Rosie?
Well, I think for absolute sure, there are an awful lot of people awakening to their spiritual nature now more than ever, and particularly young people. I've heard the young who are coming in now described as crystal children or indigo children. They seem to come in with the kind of wisdom that's taken us a lifetime to accrue. So there are beautiful, sensitive souls coming in, and these are incredible times. I know they're very tough times that we're living in, but I suppose the privilege I've had by mainly working with people with cancer is people being given that very harsh wake-up call of a diagnosis of cancer. And what that does is it cracks people open into what's called the liminal state.
Yes.
So in the healing world, it's been known for ever and ever and ever that for people to shift and move, they need to be in that liminal state. So whether it's in ancient traditions, whether it's been sweat lodges or drumming or tantra or hallucinogenic drugs or there are so many different ways that people have used to lift themselves out of day-to-day consciousness in order for healing to occur.
Yeah.
But of course, fear is a huge wake-up call. So I get to meet people at a point where change is possible. And when you ask the right questions for people in that sort of state, in terms of giving them permission to be true to themselves and do the things which really turn them on and lift them up, of course they're ready to roll, and they're ready to embrace that. And so in that liminal space, if you meet with people who are loving and kind and permissive and encouraging, that you accelerate. On the other side, if you are in environments where people are frightening and it's cold and harsh, as sadly quite a lot of hospital environments are, that is magnified on the negative side. So it's been very important for me to be part of healing centres which are loving and supportive. I'm not saying that everybody dissolves into a puddle. There's challenge, there's work to be done for people to heal, because as we've mentioned, there are these 4 quadrants: body, mind, spirit, and environment, and that there can be trauma sitting in the emotional side of things. There can be very tricky repeating relationship patterns. There can be people who are living not true to themselves and feeling sad and dispirited in that way. So it's a very joyful thing to be a holistic doctor, because it's like you're on a detective mission and you're helping people find that life, find the unlived life, find where they dropped the stitch in the knitting, and take that back up again.
Find that spark, and help the person find out who they are. And then also, it sounds like you're connecting them to resources and groups that are going to encourage that change. Because in that liminal space, as you called it, where transformation is possible, it's helped by love. It's helped by people who see you, who witness you, who are similar to you. And they're like all the ingredients of the cake, aren't they? To allow the alchemy of the change to happen. I mean, I'm really tuning into, there might be somebody listening that is is in that state of, well, I know I want to be different, or I know I could be different, but I daren't, fear, or being in a school, in an environment, in a job,
Yeah.
in a relationship where it's just that change, your confidence is knocked because it's chipped away at by
Yes.
another nervous system being fearful or not wanting you to change. And
Yes.
and I can really see how you help people. I mean, I know you've got lots of resources that you can share, and we will do in the show notes. But I feel it's very important to just let that person know listening that,
Yes.
there are places for you. You do belong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, there are holistic doctors like me who can start a process of unpacking what it might be that's ailing a person. And then going forward, so what I've done to try and spread this work is create a system of health coaching and mentorship known as health creation. And this is where these 12 principles have come. But also, I know you're offering circles, you and Joey Walters. And then, I think that we are a growing tribe of whether it's through meditation classes, yoga groups, qigong classes, healthy eating, and so on and so on and so on. It's like there's a growing tide of people who are moving into that loving, kind, compassionate relationship with themselves and each other that is just so beautiful to see.
Yeah, there's I just want to mention as well, there's a couple of groups that I'm working with later in the year, a couple of amazing companies, one called Highly Sensitive Humans and another one called the If Crowd. And they're led both by an amazing woman. One lady's called Jules DeVito and another lady called Kirsty Allen. And they're really asking questions of, actually, is there, if you're lost, you don't belong, you're very sensitive and picking up on, things in the outside world, that it's uncomfortable to be in those spaces. They're just asking the question, is it you that there's something wrong with, or is it the environment, the school, the place, the workplace that needs to change? And just that change in perspective, it helps the person come back to their own power and, and believe that they are a unique expression of life and are how they are meant to be. And that is unique and beautiful and different, as well as everybody else. And that there's a power and a beauty in that. And there are many more groups like that appearing now. And I think I just want to say I'm so passionate about it because, my kids have gone through this, that find your tribe, find where you belong, and know that there is nothing wrong with you. You are beautiful as you are.
Yeah, I love that. And as you're well aware, we have this very, very thrilling guest next time. So who exemplifies this principle? We have the amazing Hayley Mills, actress, who is gracing us with her presence to launch our podcast and to share her story of how she became true to herself in the wake of the illness that she experienced.
Wonderful. And that will be in our next episode 3. And we can't wait to help Hayley share her story with everybody. And wow, we're at time again, Rosy. It goes so quickly. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your story and all the work you have put in to understand that mind-body connection and to keep understanding it, because I don't think you're slowing down, are you? I think it's just getting more and more busy. So thank you so much, Rosy. And thank you to everybody listening. And please come back and hear episode 3 with Hayley next week.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Alive and Loving It. We really hope that today's conversation has sparked your passion and shown you ways to open up into the vibrant life that's possible for you.
Absolutely, Rosie. I mean, we have to remember transformation begins with love, and that's self-love, love for others, and love for our beautiful planet. When you embrace love and you just allow yourself to receive as much as you give, you unlock the fullest potential of your life.
That is the truth, and we're here to support you every step of the way on your journey. So if you enjoyed what you heard today, please join our community, check out our trainings and our services and the events where we can all go deeper together. And do please send us your feedback. We want to hear your ideas for the podcast, who you'd like to see us interview, the questions you want to ask, and get answered through the contact page on our website, aliveandlovingit.org.
I can't wait to read them. And when you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter and updates. And what about following us on Instagram as well? We are at Alive and Loving It Community. Once you've signed up to the newsletter, you'll receive extra notes from today's show and more inspiration to help you live your most vibrant life.
Thank you for being with us. Keep shining, stay true to yourself, and remember, this is your time to live your fullest, healthiest life.
So until next time, keep doing what you love most in life. I know Rosie and I will be, always. We're so excited to connect with you on the next episode of Alive and Loving It. And we welcome you with open hearts to our Alive and Loving It community.